Recently I got tagged in a video challenge for my all-time favorite backpacking trip. I've got so many trips out there that I've done, from the High Sierra Trail to trips in Utah like Coyote Gulch, Little Death Hollow, Canyonlands National Park, local mountains like San Gorgonio, wilderness area out by Mount Baldy. But I keep coming back to one trip, and that's the Lost Coast Trail. So for this challenge, I got tagged by Catherine Gregory. Check out her channel. I've got a link up in the cards, a link down below. Great channel. She travels all over the western U.S. Goes to some pretty cool spots. So check out her channel, and thank you, Catherine, for tagging me. And let's get on to my favorite all-time backpacking trip. So what made the Lost Coast Trail my all-time favorite backpacking trip? Well, there's so many trips, like I said before, out there. It was really hard to choose, so by choosing the Lost Coast Trail, there's just a bunch of things that happened. First off, it was one of my first trips going out with Monica and David and our friend Eric. And we had done a trip earlier in the year to Utah. And that was a fun trip in its own right. That was a backpacking trip that turned into a road trip just because we couldn't go backpacking down Coyote, or was it the Buckskin Gulch? But for this one, Lost Coast Trail, there's a lot of travel involved, 3 days of backpacking. Just a great time to be out there with some good friends. You're traveling from Southern California to Northern California. And when we left on this trip, we all met up at Monica's house, head up, and we were all tired. We got up super early. Most of us couldn't sleep the night before. We were all excited to go on this epic backpacking trip to the Lost Coast Trail. And we went up, we were driving up, got over the Grapevine. I still remember David handed me the keys. He said, "Okay, your turn." I was like, "My turn for what?" He's like, "Oh, it's your turn to drive." Like, okay. I was so tired, I really didn't want to drive, but I drove for a while. Then Monica took over. Eric did a little bit of driving. Next thing you know, we're past San Francisco and we're getting to Santa Rosa. When we got into Santa Rosa, we stopped at what was a brewery up there, Russian River Brewery. If you know anything about beers, they have a beer called Pliny the Elder. Let me tell you, David is a big fan of Pliny the Elder. And pretty much anybody else I know that knows Russian River Brewery. It's a great beer. So we stopped there. We did some flights there. I was designated driver, so I kept driving. Drove all the way up to Shelter Cove. That's where we stayed for the first night. When we got there, it was just about sunset. We found a nice place to camp up there. There's actually a campground next to the airport up there at Shelter Cove. So we were camping there, had a nice fire. David cooked us up some good food that night. I think it was a jambalaya. And we went to bed somewhat early, I think by like 9:30, 10, because we had to get up early the next day because we had to take a shuttle. So the shuttle, what you do from Shelter Cove, you take a shuttle and it takes you all the way around through the back roads over to Mattole Beach. And that's where we started off on day one. On day one, we took the shuttle, we got up to Mattole Beach, and on the shuttle itself, we had bought tickets for the shuttle, but we had to buy Eric separately because he came on, not the last minute, but pretty close to last minute. So we got him on the second shuttle to come through. Well, we were waiting there at the beach, over at Mattole Beach, and waiting for Eric to show up, and he was supposed to be about 2 hours behind us because the shuttle has to go an hour drive back to Shelter Cove and then back to Mattole Beach again. Well, about an hour later, here comes Eric, and we're looking at our watch. It's like, wow, how'd you get there so quick? He's like, he just said the shuttle was running quick. So come to find out later, he told us a couple years later, there was two guys that were at Shelter Cove, and they were about to do the trip themselves. And instead of taking a shuttle, they drove two cars. Parked a car there, and they were parking a car at Mattole Beach. Well, he just told the guys, "Hey, could I get a ride with you so I don't have to wait till my shuttle?" Sure enough, he got that ride with them up. Never met the guys before. Eric took a chance, got up there, and next thing you know, there he is. And I still remember I'm filming there, and we all looked really surprised. And let me show you what Eric said.
He's supposed to be here in 2 hours. It's been an hour, and there he is.
There he is.
See him walking up right
Don't
now.
go to the restroom before your friends leave. Leave you behind.
Oh.
So after Eric got there, we started hiking south. You keep the ocean to the right. You don't get lost. Past some tide pools, which had some really cool creatures in there we had never seen before. And you keep going up, and you come up to this lighthouse. This lighthouse is really neat. You can climb up in it. It hasn't been used in years. I can't remember the last time it was used. But really neat lighthouse. There's a bunch of seals down below. Excuse me. I'll get a drink here. But there's a lot of sea lions, seals down below. They're making their noises. And that was the last we saw of the seals and sea lions. We thought we were going to see more on this trip. But especially we're coming to a spot called Lion Gulch. But never saw them. We kept going further and we thought we were staying at a different creek. Well, come to find out it was Randall Creek. My GPS was wrong. And we gone further than we thought the first day. We found that out the next morning. But on this year that we went, Randall Creek was supposed to be closed. So when we got there, there was a lot of people coming and going, and we kept telling the people, like, oh no, this isn't Randall, it's down further. So we actually had the place to ourselves, and that wasn't, we didn't try to do that, wasn't trying to tell people where to go, but just by accident, we were telling people to go down a little bit further past Randall Creek, telling them Randall Creek was further. Well, it wasn't. So we were actually at Randall Creek. It was a great place. This was one of the first trips also I got to experience some of Monica's backcountry cooking. And let me tell you, the food on this trip was amazing. So that night we had she cooked up falafels for us. And one of the other nights, I think it was night 2, was a pesto tortellini with cheese and salmon. They were great meals. Monica does cook some good meals out there. But back to our campsite there, Randall Creek. Monica and Eric both had a lunar solo. I know I had my REI Quarter Dome 1. David had a Eureka solo, or solitaire, Eureka solitaire. And where David and I sat up, we were pretty close to where we thought the high tide was going to be. We didn't know how close it was going to be till the next morning we woke up, and it looked like it got probably within 5 to 6 feet of our tents that night. That would have been something, waking up to waves just hitting your tent. We got pretty lucky there. A great campsite, great sunset. Couldn't ask for anything more on that first day of the Lost Coast Trail. Just a beautiful area altogether out there. So day 2 was just felt like a longer day than day 1. Day 1 was 9 miles. Day 2 was 10 miles. But you're up exposed a little bit. You're up in some grasslands and you're just hiking. You're trying to get along. You still got the wind from coming off the ocean, the nice ocean breeze, which is cooling you off, but you're still exposed as well. And there's a lot of rocks this day. You're passing by a lot of private residences. There's one spot, I think it was right before Spanish Flats. There's an airstrip you walk along. That was pretty cool. They had some disc golf out there in their front yard or backyard, whatever you want to call it up there. Never saw anybody at those private residences. But as we were going up, our goal for the day was Shipman Creek. And there's one spot that a lot of people were at taking breaks, and there were some guys surfing out there. Well, later on, as we almost made it to Shipman's Creek, these 3 guys walked right past us with their surfboards on, and they were heading on through, and they were going all the way to Mattole Beach that day. When we got to Shipman's Creek, it's a really nice spot. There's some people that were across the creek that were partying. There's some people above us, but you still had a nice spot to yourself. Even though there was a lot of people on the trail, it didn't feel like there was a lot, because once you got to camp, you had a nice campsite to yourself. But when you're out there on the Lost Coast Trail, and I had to do it that night, was the way you poop out there on the Lost Coast Trail. You don't got wag bags. You're not digging cat holes. What you're doing is finding the high tide line and pooping below that. So you're going to go and dig your cat hole, but it's not up in the wilderness, not up in the woods, but actually below high tide line. So you go through, you wait for that high tide to go down, and then you can find a spot, dig your little cat hole, and poop out there on the beach in the ocean. Of course, you're not leaving your toilet paper or anything like that. You're packing that out. But basically, the waves come through and wipe out your poop to the ocean. That's how they want you to do it out there. So at Shipman's Creek that night, we had a great dinner. I think I already said it, but it was some pesto tortellinis stuffed with cheese, had some salmon with it. It was an awesome meal, and we were lucky enough that Monica was cooking for us on this trip those 2 nights, and we also had some great breakfast as well, but don't remember the breakfast as much as I do the dinner because they were so good out there. On day 3, heading back to Shelter Cove, you're finding yourself walking and hiking in more sand. Less rocks, more sand. The beach is starting to get a little bit wider out there and not as many waves. It's a little bit flatter. But what was really neat on this one was got to see some bear tracks finally. On the Lost Coast Trail, you're supposed to have a bear canister with you the whole time because there's bears out there. Never saw a bear. We finally saw bear tracks come along. I want to say it was a turkey vulture we found. It was dead. It was just almost petrified the way the neck was and everything. And then we came up to what was a dead whale. This whale we could see from a ways away and didn't smell until you got to it. So as we came around the corner, I didn't really think it was that bad of a smell, but if you ask Monica, David, and Eric, they said it stunk. And you come up around the corner, as soon as you turn around and get by it, it smelled. And it was big. It was a big whale. And I don't remember what type of whale it was. I found out one time just from the skeleton and everything. Can't remember now, but here, I'll show you the video of that whale. That was pretty big. Look at this thing. Massive. Massive. Look at the size of that. Wow. Look at the vertebrae in there, guys. Look at that. After passing that whale, we kept heading down, and on day 3 it was 7 miles to go, and we got into Shelter Cove pretty early afternoon, I want to say. We were tired, we were ready to go, but at the same point we didn't want it to end. But what was really neat, after we got into Shelter Cove, they've only got a couple restaurants. Only one was actually open when we got there, and that was a pizza company. So we had some pizza, some beers, and then headed on out. So we still had to find a place to camp that night because we weren't going to drive all the way back to Southern California that night after hiking for the whole day. So we got on the main road and went down a little ways to what was called Richardson Grove State Park. And this is in the heart of redwood country. So we pulled in, found ourselves a nice campsite, and we noticed that there were some redwoods in here, but we didn't know how big they were till the next morning. And let me tell you, those were some big trees. We woke up, made some breakfast, had some coffee, some hot cocoa, and I remember getting out of my tent and just looking up. And man, those were some big trees. I actually drove through that area again just this past year for New Year's when I was up in the redwood country again. But man, those were some big trees and just a nice, neat area. Real green, real healthy forest up there. Wouldn't mind going back there again soon. So we still had the drive home. It's still a long drive from there. But on the way home, I remember Eric saying he hadn't been to San Francisco, or if he did, he hadn't been to downtown San Francisco. So we all decided that we'd make a stop there, get him some clam chowder, which, man, I love some clam chowder. So we all had some clam chowder in San Francisco, got to check that out, and then head on back. And I still remember it was still a long drive because we took a long break there. We actually stopped also at Russian River Brewery again. I think everybody got themselves a case of Pliny the Elder for the at home. But man, after San Francisco, we were traveling pretty good until we got down towards the LA area and the freeway was shut down. So we were shut down for, I think it was only like a half hour, 45 minutes, but after driving all day and traveling, it just felt like forever. But once we got back, it was an amazing trip. Everybody was just happy to get out again. Well, the Lost Coast Trail is just one of those trails that I always wanted to go back to. Let's see here. When we went, it was in Labor Day weekend in September. I've always wanted to go back in the spring when everything's more green, there's more moisture, maybe some rain. Thought that'd be fun, and we can also have fires in that time of year. When we went Labor Day weekend later on in the year, you're not allowed to have fires along the beach, which sort of sucked. But it'd be nice to have a fire up there. It'd be nice each night, you know, dry off around the fire and just have a good time. So I hope you enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun telling you about one of my all-time favorite backpacking trips. Thank you, Catherine, for tagging me in this. So once again, check out her channel. There's a link in the card, links below, all that good stuff for her. Check out her channel. Would appreciate that. It's time for me to tag 3 people. It's time to tag 3 people. So first off, let's get to the first tag. First tag is going to be Monica. Always in Adventure Luna is her channel. There's a link below to it. And I'd like to hear what Monica's all-time favorite backpacking trip was. She's been to some pretty amazing places, so it's probably going to be hard for her to choose what her favorite trip was. Number 2 is going to be my buddy Matt from Lead Me Outdoors. He's been to some pretty cool places as well, so check out his channel down below and let's hear what Matt's got to say for his favorite all-time backpacking trip. Now number 3 is going to be a little bit of a wild card here. Not from around this area, but I met him in Utah on my Canyonlands trip, and that is my buddy Bryce Newbold. So Bryce, you're up. Let's hear what your favorite backpacking trip was. And Bryce's channel is just his name, Bryce Newbold. Link below to that as well. That's going to be it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun talking about the Lost Coast Trail. It was one of my all-time favorite backpacking trips. So thank you, Catherine, for tagging me in this. Also, check out the other 3 people I tagged as well, Monica, Matt, and Bryce. Links below to those channels, like I said earlier. So if you did like this video, though, give it a like, give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing. Ring the bell for any notifications of any new videos I got coming out. Until the next one, thanks for having me.